Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. The Sixers finished their 5-game roadie. By the way, 5 games in 7 nights. Very difficult. 4-1 was their record. Very impressive. The last game of the road trip in Minnesota, no James Harden. That Indiana Pacers game was back and forth. The finishing score was 147 to 143. Just think about the miles they were running up and down the floor. Found a way without Tobias Harris and PJ Tucker. What a good response from this club after falling to Boston. The Miami loss. A lot of fans were disappointed, wondering, what was this team? Who are they? Why are they struggling? Yada, yada, yada. Here they are. And while the Boston Celtics lose a couple of times to the New York Knicks, blowing a big lead, losing to the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, there's some struggles from Boston. Not that they're a bad team, but I'm just saying, you look at the standings and you see where Milwaukee is. You see where Boston is. You see where the Sixers are. Give them a shot. Do not die on this basketball team, because with James Harden playing this well and being this explosive, scoring the way he's scoring and finding his teammates, his passing is unreal this season. You have a fantastic shot. Believe in this team. Believe in this team. All right? Normally, that final game of a road trip, when you play 5 and 7, you could probably throw in the towel. I don't know. You just go through the motions. You're defeated. A lot of the times we say 5 games in 7 nights, but we don't really truly digest how much travel that is, going to all these different cities, trying to find a couple minutes here and there on the flight to grab 20 minutes to nap. I mean, seriously, you're getting into town sometimes super late. It's abusive. It's brutal. It's hard. And for you to go 4-1, I just want to make sure we highlight how impressive that really is. And I don't know who had worse nightmares, Miles Turner or Rudy Gobert. Minnesota was so desperate. They said, Rudy, we got to do something different with you, dude. You blow. Rudy Gobert sucks so bad that, remember, Ben Simmons once dropped 42 on his ass. I think he had to retire the moment that happened. He had to hang up the shoes and say, I'm never competing again because my ass just got waxed. I'm a defensive specialist, right? That's what Rudy Gobert thinks he is. And Ben Simmons, the worst offensive player in the history of the league, dropped 42 on his ass. It's honestly hysterical. But what Joel Embiid was doing at the end of the half, step back 3. How about that unbelievable move when he's below the basket? He throws it up, it goes. He was absurd. I had no idea. He's falling to the ground. He's throwing it up. Nothing but net. It's crazy what this man does every single night. He scored 39 points in 28 minutes in Minnesota. That doesn't even make sense. So you give him a nice little rest day by not even playing in the fourth quarter because you were able to handle business. Maxey doing his thing. He's looking sharp. He's got his swag back. Guys like McDaniels is flourishing right now. Here's the problem, right? And it's not really a problem. It's just more of a statement. This game right now, over the last couple of games, have been so up and down, fast-paced, go do your thing, run up and down the floor, which I think you can really see what Jalen McDaniels brings to the table with his athleticism. I don't know, and I'm not saying he can't. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying he can't thrive in the postseason. You're going to need him to do something in the postseason. You're going to need some guys, right? But the game slows down, and I think he excels with it flying. He gave you 20 against the Pacers. Harden had 20 assists. I mean, that game was nuts. The score was tied at half. It was something along the lines of 78-78 or 79-79. It was something like that. What? I mean, what? Minnesota scored however many. They scored under 100, so they were at 90. Sorry, these games are all kind of bleeding into one another. They scored, where are they at here? They scored 94. You were almost touching 80 points each in the Indiana game at half. Blows my mind. But I don't care how. I just care that you keep winning. And I don't really care who the opponent was, how they're playing, what they're going through, who's injured, who's not injured. All I can focus on is what the 76ers are doing. And I know right now, after the All-Star break, there was a lot of talk about how toxic the schedule was. And there's still plenty of games to go, but we were talking about how toxic it is. And it is. And for you to kick off the road trip that way, things are going to happen in a regular season. You're going to have an ugly loss to Miami, even though they responded and rebounded without Joel Embiid. Paul Reed was awesome. They lost at home to Miami, won in Miami. So they kind of did what they needed to do against that team. It was a split, okay. But when you lose to Boston, they didn't even play bad, but you lose to Boston, Jason Tatum hits that killer shot at the end in the face of DeAnthony Melton, and you lose to Miami. Things are going to happen. All I ask is you respond. All I ask is you meet the moment. And this team has met the moment more times than not, whether you like to admit it or not, whether you have fear or not. They started out 12-12. Do the math. This team was 500 after 24 games. And I specifically, early on, remember pounding it into your brain that last year, this Boston Celtics team was 500 after 50. And they went to the NBA Finals. Not many games left after that. Still a decent chunk, but I'm just saying. 50 games out of 82. It's a ton. Give them time. You were dealing with the James Harden injury. You were dealing with the Tyrese Maxey injury. It's a lot going on. 12-12, and look at what their record is now. They're doing everything you could possibly ask. The only thing they've really struggled with to this point is beating one basketball team. Go look at the West. Look what they did to Denver. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Look what they've done to them. It's one team. And I get it. That one team is problematic because it's your biggest rival. We watched the Phillies struggle against the New York Mets, and it wasn't very easy throughout the regular season. Now, ultimately, the Mets met it. The Boston Celtics don't Boston Celtic. They're a well-ran organization who you saw what they did last season. They have a lot of special talent, so it's different. I don't know how it's going to shape up. But don't give up on this team. Believe in this team. I believe in Doc. I've even been on the record saying this. If they do fail at some point, now I'm not talking second round. I'm saying let's say they meet. I hate kind of doing this, but I guess let's say somehow the standings fall where you get past the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round and you faced the Boston Celtics in the third round. I don't know how it's going to play out. Maybe you do have to play Boston in the second round. I have no idea. I don't think you lose this season because Doc Rivers failed them. It's going to be on Harden. It's going to be on Embiid. It's going to be on Maxey. You need Maxey to be a stud. You need Maxey to be a dog. And that's on Maxey, not Doc. It's on Maxey. You need Niang to hit his shots. That's on Niang. If Niang's going to go out there and go 0 for 5 from 3, that's not a Doc problem. That's a Niang problem. Whoever's number is called is going to have to step up. But I think it's going to fall on the players. And realistically, I've been pretty consistent with that for years and years and years of postseason play to this point. When Brett Brown went toe-to-toe with Nick Nurse, and Nick Nurse went with the two big guys, and you just looked at the counters that Brett Brown made throughout those games. I didn't think he failed them. They weren't ready to win yet. Joel Embiid at that time in his career was not this. Ben Simmons is a fraud. There's a lot of variables. Ben Simmons against the Hawks, a fraud. That was your biggest problem. He sucked. He costed you the series. He costed you many, many playoff runs because he's afraid to play the game. I'm not worried about Doc. I think he will stagger Joel Embiid and James Harden. I think it's too obvious not to. Plus, these players are going to be playing way more minutes in the playoffs. So because of that, it's kind of by default. Plus, James Harden is playing ridiculous. Ridiculous. what he's doing off the dribble, what he's doing setting up his teammates. He's healthy, man. This James Harden, I figured he would be better than he was last year because I thought the hamstring was hindering him. He somehow even overseeded my expectations. And my expectations were pretty high. I thought he'd be electric. I thought he'd be healthy. I thought he'd change what this team was all about. He somehow even did more, which is beautiful. But I love it. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with the two-man game. Joel Embiid is so consistent. Every night he's whooping ass. Every night it's 30 plus. Every night he's causing someone so much frustration. Go look at Miles Turner. Screaming the F-bomb, pissed off, upset with himself. You can't do a damn thing. You have no shot. Joel is playing at an all-time high. I mean, he's so elite. These teams don't have a damn shot of stopping him. They might throw a lot of bodies his way, which then means the ball will get kicked out, and then someone has to deliver. Means there's an open man. But there's threats. If Maxey can do what he's been doing. I figured he'd turn it around, though, and he did. He's too good to stink forever. There's some question marks. But for the most part, I feel like I have a good grasp on a lot of these players. Niang's hot or cold. You just got to hope that he's hot in big spots on certain nights. McDaniels, as I alluded to, that's a question mark for me because I don't know what happens when the game slows down, and I don't even know what happens with the backup five. That doesn't mean that this team can't grind and find a way, but there's some questions, but there's questions with all teams. So it's not as if the Sixers are the only team with some question marks. I think it's simple to scream Paul Reed at the backup five, but I don't know. I still lean towards P.J. Tucker. And I know that might make some of you drive off the road if you're listening to this on the podcast version, which, hey, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you know that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, search Sports Talk with Broads Media. You can find me there, and you can take me on the road. You think that music's fantastic? It is, but nothing's better than having Broads on volume 60 while you're driving to work. You want to get pumped up and stoked while you put in your 8-hour shift. Make sure you go check that out. And toss a little 5-star rating and a review. It doesn't hurt anybody. Thank you. Might as well give you a shameless plug. I'm going P.J. Tucker, though, as of right now. Not that I'm anti-Paul Reed or anti-anybody else at all. But you brought him in here because he knows how to win in the postseason. The small ball five has worked out for P.J. Tucker in his career and with Milwaukee and with Miami. He's going to make plays for you. That's where my head's at this moment. But in-game adjustments, if you realize something's not working, if you see a matchup that screams something otherwise, I'm not tied to it. I'm just saying I'm leaning that way. All right, I'll check out some Anytime Hotline texts here. Nicholas texts in. Has Jalen McDaniels changed your mind since he has started to turn the corner? I'm intrigued. I think you see that he's got a level of athleticism. He's got some length. There's some jump to his game that I don't know if this team has in a different player. I think this is the best way to describe it. He brings something that this team doesn't have. So from that angle, yeah, I mean, he's been playing better lately. I think the speed of the game allows him to do that. Doesn't mean he can't perform when it slows down, but I just wonder what it looks like. I haven't really changed any thoughts on it because I kind of knew what he was. What he's doing lately is what we were sold when the Matisse Thybulle trade happened. And by the way, credit to Daryl Morey for making this happen and for getting this acquisition because he's 1,000% giving you more than anything Matisse Thybulle can give you. Even House has sprinkled his name in there a couple little times here over the last few nights. Hey, the more the merrier. Number's not called very often, so when it is, make sure you do something. Speaking of some of those guys, though, Melton, and I know Melton's on a higher level than some of the names we just mentioned. My biggest nitpick, and I know it sounds like I've been a little negative over the last couple of minutes. I believe in this team. Why? Because of the superstar talent. Because Joel Embiid, James Harden, and those two are dynamic weapons. Would love Melton to make a little bit more layups, just throwing it out there. I think he's got a tough time with the layups. Can we put the ball in the basket, please? These are simple. Let's just do it. Let's get those easy points, please. But to answer your question, Nicholas, I haven't really changed my mind because I thought what was described at the time of the trade is exactly what we're getting now. But it's nice for him to show some bounce. It's nice for him to make a little bit more noise and to try and make it difficult for Doc to take him out. He's playing well enough where every time you talk about the rotation and who should be there and what's happening, his name is being flirted in because, well, he's playing well. So that's how I'd kind of answer that. Brendan asks, is this team better than Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, JJ? If so, why is there less excitement about the playoffs? Well, at that time, we weren't losing in the second round every single year. So I think from that aspect, Brendan, it's pretty simple. There's fatigue, second round fatigue. And until we get out of the second round, there's going to be a lot of people that still feel that you have to prove me something. I get it to a degree, but I won't let that impact the fact that I'm having a lot of fun watching Joel. Joel Embiid doesn't grow on a tree. So when you have someone this special in your organization who takes the floor and shines as often as he does, I need to make sure every single night that he's hooping, I'm going to embrace it and love every second. So I'm not going to take it for granted. And I think not appreciating this is taking it for granted because this guy doesn't really make sense. Seriously, 39 points in 28 minutes. Taking step-back threes at his size and crushing someone like Rudy Gobert and watching how upset Miles Turner is. And the list goes on how these players just seriously are in so much pain and in disbelief on what they have to do. I couldn't imagine going to sleep the night before having to face Joel and then, of course, falling asleep afterwards because I would just be thinking about every possession, how he dominated me, and how I felt like I had zero chance to succeed. Miles Turner doesn't feel that very often. Rudy Gobert, I mean, like I said, Ben Simmons once shot 42, so you should have retired a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Is this team better? Yes, I think it is because Ben Simmons is not on the basketball team. He was such a problem. And James Harden is so creative as a floor general. He's a threat with what he can do from shooting the basketball, driving too. He can actually beat defenders this season. So he can drive, he can hit the step back. He's a threat, which helps open up the floor elsewhere. And I mentioned this in the last episode. Sometimes you need your primary ball handler to bail you out. Sometimes there's a possession that's not the greatest. The other team wins the battle, and there's a desperation shot in that half-court possession. But James can hit a deep three. 10 feet behind the line of scrimmage. Here I am going football on you. Behind the three-point line. And James Harden is always your ball handler. That team was lost because someone who was supposed to run your offense couldn't. This is different. This guy's supposed to run your offense and can. And I think he's better than Ben. I think he's better than Jimmy. Would I love a J.J. Redick on this basketball team right now? You bet your ass I would. That would be so sick. There's a lot of talent on that team. But it came together in a weird way. And it came together at a time where some of these players weren't ready. If you told me you get this version of Joel on that basketball team, see, the Ben thing crushes everything. So maybe you still fall because you just can't succeed 4-on-5. So maybe I take that back. I can't let Ben slip. I have to make sure that that's clearly noted on how much of an issue it was. This team is better. Your 2 stars are more in the go mode. And I even hear some Sixers fans forget the team getting out of the second round. The James Harden factor. They don't believe in James because James has never done it. I don't think James has ever been able to play with a Joel Embiid like this, though. Clint Capella and the way the Houston Rockets played is not the way this team's playing. Doesn't mean they automatically get to the NBA Finals. Doesn't mean they win a championship. But it's hard for me to relate players playing in other circumstances with what's happening now. Because you've never been able to see this team, this healthy, play together when Joel is at this tier. So I don't know how that relates to a Houston James Harden. It's completely different. The threat of Joel Embiid changes what the defense has to do and how James Harden can play. That wasn't Clint Capella. That wasn't their spacing that was in Houston with D'Antoni. So there's a lot of variables here. It's not as simple as just saying James failed before. That means James can never win. A lot of players failed before. With that logic, Michael Jordan was never going to win a championship because he struggled in the beginning to learn how to win. There's a process. There's a growing pains. And James is definitely towards the back of the career. But this team's not the teams he went to war with in the past. Marquise texts in. Do you think Jokic wins the MVP again? I do. Unfortunately, the people who vote believe that this guy created basketball, which doesn't make sense to me. But they look at Jokic and go, this guy reinvented the wheel. No, he didn't. It pisses me off that Jokic is going to win 3 straight MVPs when there's significantly better players. LeBron James, a billion. Let me be very clear. There's a billion better players than Jokic that have never won 3 straight MVPs. Unfortunately, the analytical world has gone so far that they're putting this guy in the greatest basketball player to ever play the sport of basketball territory. Now what's being thrown out there by the Jokic people is he doesn't have great teammates. So that means he deserves more credit. The goalpost moves and moves and moves every time. But Marquise continues. Joel is doing everything he needs to, and it's looking like he's going to lose it again. I don't understand the voting, but what more can he ask of him? You can't ask him to do much more. He led the league in scoring last year as a big man, and he's scoring more points this season. Averaging 33 points per game. He averaged 30 last year. A little bit more than 30, but it was 30.6. Right now, he's averaging 33.3. He's doing everything. 1.6 blocks per game, 1.1 steals per game, 4 assists, 10 rebounds. There's not much more you can ask this man to do. And I think at this point, he's kind of embraced the role of not winning an MVP. And maybe that's what helps him kind of, motivate himself to get that NBA championship. I'm not sure. I get it. He's probably mad. He's angry, as he should be, because Jokic is not that much better, where Joel Embiid doesn't deserve to win. I thought if you wanted to say Jokic should have won the first year he won it, I can get behind that. Really, I can support that. Last year was no doubt Joel Embiid, so it should have been 1-1. And then, in my eyes, I still think that Joel Embiid could win it again this season. But how it would be 3 straight for Jokic is an embarrassment to the league. It's an embarrassment to the voting, and it should put it on notice that things need to change. If I'm the NBA and I see how this is happening, it's like, oh, this can't happen. There's no way that this guy deserves it. This may happen. No one else is ever in the conversation. Like, he's that far and away better than every single person ever to play the sport of basketball. Come on. He doesn't even do the things defensively that Joel does that's so damn special. Instead, I remember the Nuggets saying, we got to yank you off the floor. Okay. That screams MVP to me. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. But anyway, we got a game on Friday against Portland. The Sixers return home. Here's what I'll say about this as we close our thoughts here. Just like the last game of a road trip, sometimes could be a spot where a team not throws in the towel, but goes through the motions. The first game home is always a little difficult. Some days off, though. Harden had a little bit more time because they sat him that last game, which I thought was a good move by Doc, sitting Joel early and then sitting James late in the road trip was a good idea to maximize some time there to gain a little bit of rest. But they won that final game. So maybe they can obviously do what they need to against Portland. But I'm just saying, the first game of a homestand after a long road trip and the last game of the road trip is always ones to kind of look out for. This team has done a lot, though, to earn the respect from the fan base. And that's all I've been kind of preaching this whole year is keep riding, keep enjoying, let them do their thing, and we'll judge when we need to judge. But as for regular season stuff, which is all we can watch right now, they've done everything except for beat Boston, but they've done everything we kind of asked them to do. So let's just keep rocking with them and see where Joel Embiid and James Harden takes us. Thank you guys all so much for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.